would really like to make this next 60 minutes really interactive. So we would start with a presentation, and which will be for 30 minutes, and then next 30 minutes we'll take all the questions and answers. So we have enough, time for a round of discussions. Some introductions to begin with. My name is Sachal Aneja, and I am the Asia Pacific Corporate Engagement Manager for VSO. And apart from being based in India, I look at several other countries for their CSR partnerships and lead on the knowledge exchange program. I'm also joined by my colleague Praveen.
Hi, I'm Praveen. I'm the Senior Program Manager at VSO India.
And together, both of us will be presenting at this seminar. As Kerry already mentioned, would once again request everyone to mute their microphones if they haven't. And after 30 minutes of the presentation, I would request Paul Phillips to kindly coordinate the questions and answers session. So if you have any questions, coming across while we are presenting or speaking, you can keep typing them in the chat window, and later Paul can actually put them all together, and we can respond to them accordingly. So with that, I would like to start. And to begin with, I would like to give a quick overview to India. And, as we probably know that India has been declared as a middle income country recently, which has actually led to a lot of institutional donors exiting from India because they see that there is a lot of potential in India to actually take the development work ahead. At the same time, there is an emergence of the private sector, which is clearly with a lot of new partnerships building up, a lot of excitement and energy related to the sustainable development goals. And even the government has played a big role as they have introduced a revolutionary act which actually mandates all the big companies to spend 2% of their total net profits of the last 3 years, average of that, on CSR. So this particular law has in a way created a huge platform for the companies and NGOs to actually come together, have a dialogue, and further the development work in the country. If I was to sum it up, this will be more than $5 billion which is available in India for development work. So that is the larger scenario in which VSO is operating in India. And VSO has been in India for over 3 decades now. And engaged in different thematic areas, particularly speaking about livelihoods, where we have skill development programs and farm-based livelihoods interventions. We have a lot of work in youth engagement through our youth citizen service and ICS models. We've been working in the field of inclusive education through SMS Story and various other technology-based interventions, as well as a lot of work on social accountability and access to services. Now, what's interesting about India is that last year in October, when we had launched our corporate engagement strategy and we were just starting to build on our work with the private sector, within a span of 5 months, the India team was successfully able to raise £1 million from different corporates. So this includes partnerships with companies such as IBM, Vodafone, Bharti Infratel, which is a part of the Bharti Enterprises Group, a big company popularly known as, by their brand name Airtel, and Accenture. And just to give some statistics, overall in the last 3 years, VSO India has engaged 97 corporate volunteers. And these volunteers have come from different companies, looking at 7 companies in total. And it's been a mix of international and national corporate volunteers, 58 international and 39 national volunteers. So the learnings which we'll be sharing as part of this webinar will be all experiential, learnings which we have gained from, the interventions which we've worked on in the last few years. So as the next section, I would request Praveen to actually give an insight or maybe talk through what is really the difference between short-term and long-term volunteering.
Okay. So hi again. All of us know the long-term and short-term volunteer duration. So I will not get into that. So if we look at the kind of some of the merits of both or the features of both long-term and short-term volunteers. So short-term is mainly it is an individualistic approach, because we know volunteers they come through a kind of project, specific project which is tailor made for them, which they contribute over a period of 1 to 2 years. And short-term volunteering is mostly focused around it's a team-based approach. So, for example, we have a IBM corporate volunteering program which is for 4 weeks, and they work in teams. So they come as a team of 12, and the 12 IBMers are placed in 4 different organizations in sub-teams of 3. And the focus there is they work in a team and contribute effectively within that period of time. Detailed results we get in long-term volunteering versus better results in short-term. So in long-term volunteering, we focus on a detailed kind of analysis and in-depth kind of an output. But if you look at the short-term volunteering, it's much more beneficial because within the short period of time, they're able to give better results. So just to give you an example, we've developed a business expansion plan for one of the organizations working on skilling of persons with disabilities, which we'll talk about in a while. Again, in long-term volunteering, if you look at, it's mostly experiential understanding of local issues because they're able to spend more time in the community and with the partner organization versus a more focused approach, a smarter way of working because they hit the ground running, as they say, and they pick up on the key essentials and deliver that result within that particular short period of time. In long-term volunteering, all of you will agree, challenges are more personal because, the local heart conditions are there and, the hardships which the individual volunteers go through, which VSO is well equipped to manage versus a professional challenge in short-term volunteering. So the time period is short and even the challenges are mostly professional. So, and we address those kind of professional issues. So, for example, we have currently, corporate volunteers who are placed with government initiatives. And within that government initiative, there are a lot of challenges in terms of how the strategy they're able to build, how they're able to develop the process and, give the design for the project management, etc., etc. So, within that, they come up with these professional challenges which we are able to address quickly and effectively.
Great. Thank you, Praveen, for that. And at this point in time, I would also like to speak about a few myths that we feel, are often referred to when we speak about long-term volunteering as against short-term. The first myth, and I'll just highlight 3 myths, and then we will be sharing 2 case studies with you, through which we will be actually breaking each of these myths. The first one clearly is that the longer you stay on site, the bigger is the impact you have on the success of the project. The second myth is that you will be able to see the change your project makes over the period of time if it is long-term. And third is about the impact, that short-term employee volunteering has limited impact. So these are the 3 broad myths that we will be talking about in the next session when we'll be presenting the 2 case studies. So I would request Praveen to share the first case study with Accenture.
So we had developed a partnership with the Ministry of Rural Department. It's basically focusing on there's a program called DDU-GKY, and the DDU-GKY program is a program of Government of India which promotes skilling of persons with disabilities in specific, and the target they have by 2022 is to reach out to around 2 million persons with disabilities in India, and skill them effectively so that they're able to be employed. The challenge that we identified was that the DDU-GKY had was to empanel the PIA, which is the organizations which works with people with disabilities for their training. So that was a big challenge, and the need they had was to how they can kind of streamline the guidelines for the empanelment of the partner implementing agencies. So at the right time, we had 2 Accenture volunteers who came, And when they came, the whole the initial plan for them was to do a value chain analysis of agro-based produce. But when we realized the need and the initial plan that we had to make a change, because our executive director intervened and said that we had to get the best out of the corporate volunteers, and their skills is mostly focusing on coordination, analysis, looking at detailed guidelines, setting up the SOP and so on and so forth. So we immediately changed the plan, and then they worked with the Ministry of Rural Development to give the best guidelines which they have, which they incorporated. So some of the positives there and some of the key learnings we got was to basically dealing with a bureaucratic approach, because we are dealing with the government. It was to deal with the higher authorities. We needed a strategic engagement there. We have to change the TOR. We have to be really flexible as VSO in meeting these kind of requirements, bringing the corporate and the government together. We worked as a team. We worked with the volunteers and the bureaucracy to get this going, because we had to make a lot of flexible arrangement in terms of developing terms of reference, letters, coordinations, fixing up meetings with the relative teams, give strategic direction so that our partners who are capacitated or they have the capacity in the area of disability and skilling, they had to be brought to the table for the workshop. And also looking at other areas of interventions, like for example, doing extensive field research, supporting the volunteers, coordinating and facilitating the workshop and reports. So finally, after doing all of this, and it was just a 2-month engagement, we finally have that guidelines for empanelment of the PIAs, which was appreciated and accepted by the ministry. Not only that, the doors opened for us to engage with them, and subsequently we also had IBM team who were based with their partner implementing agency to further strengthen their terms of reference and guidelines for the training process. So lastly, now to share with you, we are happy to say that we are in the process of developing a technical resource cell at the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, to look at how we can further take on and strengthen the whole process of skilling of persons with disabilities. So that's the impact which both the corporate volunteers bring in and the partnership, strategic partnership with the government, like the Ministry of Rural Development, can do.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Praveen. And in the image which we are sharing currently, you will see that there are a few IBM volunteers who are actually sharing their recommendations with the government. So after a successful placement of 2 Accenture volunteers who worked brilliantly, and the ministry was very impressed with the kind of support VSO India brought in, they requested us for more corporate volunteers. So the next engagement with them was to actually dedicate 3 IBM volunteers who worked with partner support agency of the government and help them with some recommendations in terms of increasing the demand from persons with disabilities for the skilling program of the government. So that is the picture about that. Moving ahead to talk a little more about IBM. The IBM CSC program is where VSO engages with IBM at a global level. The CSC program started in 2008, and as part of that, IBM sends 500 employees every year in teams of 10 to 15 to different parts of the world. The engagement started with VSO through a pilot in 2014. As part of this case study, I will also be sharing, a few insights which we got from an impact evaluation, which was done by the Global Monitoring and Evaluation team. So thank you, Simon, Daniel, Barbara, Ashlina, and Alfred for, putting this together. So this case study is about an organization called Samarthanam, which Praveen briefly spoke about. Samarthanam is in the business of skilling and employing persons with disabilities, and they are a partner to VSO India. when we started off with the IBM engagement in the first cycle, a team of 3 IBMers were placed with this organization. And Samarthanam runs a call center where they have a 100-seater call center where most of the people, 80% of the people who are actually working there are people with different kinds of disabilities. So there is a visual impairment, people with mobility impairment, and various other disabilities. And this call center has been working quite well for some time. And Samarthanam as an organization definitely wanted to expand its operations. Now, being an NGO, they were very good with community mobilization, outreach, training, and getting the employment through. But they did not have those critical skills within their team to actually expand and take the operations to the next level. And this is where they really felt that a corporate, which is actually the a corporate organization whose core expertise is in scaling up these kind of initiatives would be very helpful, and that is how VSO India facilitated the partnership and brought IBMers on board to this organization. Now, what happened there was something fantastic, and this team of 3 IBMers actually studied the entire processes which were being followed. They interacted and worked very closely with the Samarthanam leadership, the team at the call center, and also with the people who were working at the call center. And as part of the 1-month engagement, they were there for 4 weeks. They developed a business expansion plan for this rural BPO. They developed a sales pitch, a presentation, and an internal communications plan for Samarthanam. Now, what this model really did was that it created a win-win-win model altogether. If we look at how this relationship, really worked well for all the stakeholders, is that the NGO, Samarthanam, really gained from these skills because these 3 people who were placed there and working very closely with the team for a period of month each, are global consultants. So, they have tackled different kind of, challenges, worked with different clients all over the globe, and then they bring all that insight, knowledge, and learning into Samarthanam. So, bringing the best possible solutions on the table for them. Samarthanam as an organization would have found it really hard to actually engage IBM as a consultant to this project, because that would have been a very expensive model for them. At the same time, I feel that when we engage specialized people as volunteers versus consultants, it's make a lot of difference, because when they come on board as consultants, the driving factor is actually monetary. But against that, if they come as volunteers, there's a lot of heart in that entire engagement, and they are more than happy to stretch themselves and to do as much as they can to contribute to the project. So in that case, for Samarthanam, it worked very well. And the best part is that, even after the engagement was over, the Samarthanam leadership team was very confident in taking the recommendations ahead. And in the future, sessions, we'll also be quickly talking about some of the impact that this entire engagement generated, as we did the impact evaluation after 15 months of this cycle happening. Now, for the employees, the actual IBMers who were placed there, again, it was a life-changing personal development opportunity. They got to work in different multicultural context with different colleagues from all over the world. This kind of engagement really make them feel that they could be highly creative problem solvers. They could build resilience to uncertainty, and they could re-engineer some tested business techniques to this NGO to making it work for them. At the VSO level, all of this actually was very well aligned to what VSO plans to do in country. So each and every engagement that VSO designs, a corporate volunteering engagement, is very well integrated into the country level strategy of what VSO is trying to achieve in India. So definitely it is a win-win for VSO. And if we look, it is also, in a way really helping IBM as the core company, as the business. Because when these 3 employees were working for a month very closely with these people with disabilities, they realized that, IBM being one of the global companies into the computer technology business, if they tweak their technologies a little bit, they could actually make all of their devices and equipment disabled friendly, which will not only give them a huge edge and advantage in the market in terms of profits, but will also make them, one of the most disabled friendly company globally. So in terms of goodwill, they will get a lot of added value. Now, this kind of business intelligence and market intelligence also comes in handy through these corporate employee volunteering programs, which VSO tries to steer and facilitate through. In this particular example, the current situation is that the Samarthanam leadership has continued working on the recommendations of the IBMers. The IBMers, in fact, before leaving the placement, also met some of the existing clients of Samarthanam and showing them the potential, secured some additional business. And the organization now has evolved the strategy a bit to make it more contextualized and more realistic. But they will be extending their call center with 100 seats to a total of 235 by end of 2016. And they have a potential of increasing to 160 seats per center in 8 new locations. That is what they are planning to do. So this has been the overall impact of this case study. Moving on, I would like to share some more learnings which we will put in the format of the impact evaluation which was done by the Global Monitoring and Evaluation team, specifically starting with looking at relevance and effectiveness, for which I would like Praveen to share more about that.
Yeah, so relevance is very important when we are looking at corporate short-term volunteering engagement. So for example, in India, we align their engagement, within the country's strategy, which is closely linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. So if we look at the thematic areas, education, livelihoods, and social accountability, all our corporate volunteer engagement contributes to these, and all of you know that it links to very much to SDG 2, SDG 4, SDG 5, SDG 7, for example. Again, we have to make it very clear that the vision and mission of the engagement or the projects are aligned closely with the NGO's objectives and mission, and also the corporate objectives and mission. So, for example, we have a partner called Sicodicon. I have not elaborated; it's a very long acronym. Sicodicon is one of the organizations working in Rajasthan. They work on issues of livelihoods, mostly focusing on agro value chain and empowerment of poor and small farmers. This particular organization, we have two engagement. One is that the IBM team is working there to strengthen their their business expansion strategy for the next 5 years. So they're working on that. At the same time, there is a team of young Vodafone employee volunteers who are looking at the marketing strategy for the value chain. So this is a very clear link. So both these teams are working towards achieving the organization mission, which fits in very well within our strategy, and overall it is contributing to the SDG 2 and 7. So there's a direct link over there. If you looking at effectiveness, the scope of work is very essential. We start designing the scope of work almost 4 to 5 months before the volunteers come into the placement, and that has entire detail about not only the organization background but also why a thorough needs assessment, the analysis of why they need the requirement, the problem statement, and also the objectives and deliverables, which is detailed out in tasks. So all the 4 weeks or 7 weeks, the detailed task list is there, and the expected outcome and impact is there, which is jointly designed and developed in consultation with the partners and the communities. The other most important things is we also need to bring about a balance between the scope of work and the skills of the volunteers, which is more essential, and also the expectations that the volunteers come with after they arrive in country. So once they arrive in country, we also do a detailed discussion between the partner, the volunteer on the scope of work to match expectations and if necessary, some kind of we need to be flexible to sharpen and bring about alterations into the scope of work. Yeah.
Thank you, Praveen. Moving on to efficiency as the next point. Engaging all the stakeholders early in discussion, VSO team members, could be NGO staff, and any other stakeholders whose participation is key, to the placement is really important. So that is one of the things as a very practical points that we've done, and that's worked well. Along with assessing NGOs on the basis of mission and values, it is really important to actually also look into the culture of the organization and their perception to volunteering. And this learning has come, over a period of time where we found that, we have placed volunteers with organizations whose vision, mission are very well aligned to what VSO is trying to do. But at the same time, their understanding of volunteering could be very localized, and the VSO India, particularly in this case, had to do a lot of capacity building at the NGO level so that the impact can be maximized of the placement, both for the NGO as well as for the volunteer. Then specifically in certain cases when referring to short-term assignments, interpretation services have played a very important role, and if they are available in time since the beginning of the intervention, it really helps volunteers in dealing with a lot of language barriers which come into play. Then looking at impact. Look, again, going back to the same example which I shared about the IBM intervention in Samarthanam. If you see the business expansion strategy which was developed by the IBMers said that the Samarthanam organization had the potential to actually move from 100 to 5,000 seater call center by the year 2020. And that clearly means that, through this strategy, they will be able to reach out to 4,900 more persons with disabilities, skill them and provide them employment. The longer term impact which this, 1 month intervention will lead to is social inclusion and economic empowerment of persons with disabilities, which in a way will actually change their lives forever. While IBMers were there in Bangalore, and VSO India has actually, hosted multiple cycles of the volunteers in different cities. Some of the IBMers also worked in the city of Varanasi, where they worked with artisan communities. And one of the artisans reported that his income actually increased by 4-fold by getting some social media training from the IBMers, because earlier this person used to travel from Varanasi to Delhi, which is a distance of about 800 kilometers. Every time he had to go and meet potential buyers, which was a lot of cost. But with the training and the strategy that IBMers built to contact the potential buyers through social media and do transactions online, they were really able to save that cost. At the same time, their profits increased innumerably. So that has been another big impact. Again, talking about a lot of innovations. When businesses interact with NGO models, they are able to bring in a lot of insights and innovations, because they are working in a evolving market, dealing with different clients and with different problems. So they are able to re-engineer a lot of solutions, making it very contextualized to the local needs of the organization. Again, an example from IBMers, where they developed a finance tool in one of the locations and helped a lot of self-help groups to access finance from local banks. So the NGOs which were working there were already had formed communities into different self-help groups, but they did not know exactly how to access those financial entitlements or facilities that were available to them. So with a small input which IBM has brought in and worked over a period of 1 month, they developed a lot of tools which were very easy, and they trained these people on how to then access those banking facilities and be able to become more financially included and have financial independence over their local businesses. So that has been one of the impacts. And then definitely talking about mutual inspiration that both NGOs and volunteers derive through the engagement, where the volunteers when they see a lot of commitment and they see the issues on the ground, they are very moved and they want to engage and are completely sensitized with the organizations. At the same time, the NGOs also, when they see volunteers bringing in so much expertise and trying really hard to make things work, it actually creates a model of mutual inspiration, which is very exciting to see. Talking about sustainability, which I would say is the last part we would like to touch about. As I said, the IBM impact evaluation of the project I spoke about happened after 15 months of the placement. So when we went back and did this impact evaluation, spoke to different stakeholders, IBMers, I think the big change that could happen was in the mindset of the Samarthanam's leadership on the potential of the project, and also in terms of decision making. So these IBMers not only influenced the strategy, but a lot of business practices, because when you are from a small organization, you move into a big organization, there are a lot of things which you have to keep into account, which includes keeping the employee morale high, how to increase their in-house capacity as they are on that growth path, and what are the different systems and skills they need to bring in to have those capacities intact to really get the kind of touching the ambition they really want to. So these IBMs also conducted a lot of training on improving listening skills, solving problems as a team, and as a small initiative, they also set up a bell on the floor, on the premises where these IBMers, where the people used to actually do the business in. And every new transaction, somebody would ring that bell and would actually stand up and applaud the person. So even these small things actually really helped in changing the culture of the organization. And Samarthanam actually feels that this has really helped them in looking forward and being able to work towards the objective which they have created along with IBM. So this was a bit about sustainability, and as I said, 30 minutes of presentation followed by 30 minutes of questions and answers. We are through with what we wanted to share, and I would now request Paul Phillips to share some of the questions so we can respond to them, and also invite Shalin Rakesh, who's the Executive Director for VSO India, who is joined us now to respond to some of the questions.
Thanks, Sachal. I hope everybody can hear me. And that was a fantastic presentation. And now we've got lots of questions coming in. I think we'll try, if possible, to get people to ask their own questions. I'll just tell you that we've already received questions in this order from Perna, from Philip, from Anand, and then I'll bring some more people in. So first of all, Perna, could you unmute and ask your questions? Or maybe not.
Sorry, my question is that there was a picture of technology in development, and I saw that the VSO India publication. So I was just curious about what exactly, because I was not really aware of that one. So can you just tell a little bit about that initiative?
So that initiative, thank you, Purna, for your question. VSO in India also sees its role as a knowledge partner to civil society, to government, and to corporate organizations. So as part of our corporate engagement strategy, we do a lot of learning events, a lot of knowledge events. So when we actually launched the knowledge exchange program in India in October last year, we did that through a learning event in partnership with IBM, where we spoke about unlocking the talent of corporate sector and bringing them to the development projects. And the publication that you saw, it was about another learning event which VSO India conducted in March, which was specifically focusing on technology to scale up development impact. And this theme was built around the fact that a lot of NGOs have been coming up with very innovative models in the communities they operate, because they have a good understanding of the local issues, they have a good rapport with the communities and with the local stakeholders. But again, when they are to scale up those interventions to different parts of the same state or even to other places in the country, more than often they fail. So this was an attempt of VSO India to actually bridge that gap and bring together some technology giants, some of our existing corporate partners, and a lot of NGOs to actually facilitate that dialogue and deliberation. So the corporates, through their knowledge and expertise, can give ideas, and also it was a networking opportunity to connect for taking forward some of these innovations, and for the NGO partners to really gain from the insights and experience.
Hi Purna, just to add, hi, this is Shalin here. So just to add to what Sachal said, we do try to have a lot of these learning events in India, which VSO is trying to curate. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to have a dialogue with different stakeholders in terms of some of the approaches that are being undertaken within our sector. So technology is a really important one, particularly for India, given its capacity to scale up and really reach hard to reach populations in India, and that's something that we are considering, as we discussed in a recent call on education, how we can actually build that into all our programs. So one of the things that that we tried to do in this particular workshop was to try and bring out what are the challenges that different stakeholders are currently facing in terms of use of technology, the relevance of technology, and particularly what does it mean for primary actors and communities, because there are all kinds of different innovations with regard to technology which are being tried in a country like India. Not all of them are necessarily inclusive, not necessarily appropriate and relevant for the primary actors. So VSO is trying to position itself as an agency which is trying to create that dialogue, particularly on behalf of primary actors, so that everybody within the sector is able to see what role they can best play in terms of engagement of technology within programs.
Thanks, Sachal. Philip, can you unmute the next question?
Sachal and Praveen, great presentation. Good to hear you speak about this. And hi, Shalini. Quick question. When I was there, and we were talking to the Indian government about the corporate volunteer program, and I know they were very pleased with the corporate volunteers. But I remember them saying, can we have some long-term volunteers as well? And I wondered, how you were seeing that going forward. And do we have any examples of where we've got corporate volunteers and longer-term volunteers working together, and how will we take this forward going, in the future?
Philip, hi, this is Shaleen. So yes, we do have examples of long-term volunteering in the Indian context, certainly. So we've had different kinds of skilled volunteers, in the space of education, in the space of livelihood, who worked with us for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and so on. We've also had Accenture volunteers working with us over much longer periods of time. I think, the government in particular looks at opportunities of both of combining both short and long-term volunteering. And I think that what we are increasingly trying to work with the government on, and also other stakeholders, including different civil society actors on, is combining different volunteers, different kinds of volunteering approaches into single interventions. So one example that Praveen gave earlier was of Seco-Decon, where Vodafone and IBM volunteers are working together. And similarly, we are trying to see how we can look at single interventions where IBM volunteers themselves can play relay volunteering roles over a much longer period of time. So the idea really is, in terms of creating sustainability of the volunteer inputs, is to look at combining different kinds of volunteering. And sometimes it can be combinations of short-term volunteers over a period of time in terms of relay volunteering, or it could be, with different organizations coming together, and sometimes it can be short and long-term volunteers coming together. So that's really the dialogue that we are having currently with the government. And in terms of preparing a technical resource cell within the ministry, which is one of the options on the table, the whole idea is to look at how we can create a space where volunteers can work over longer periods of time.
Thanks, Aline. Anand, are you able to unmute for your question?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thanks the India team for a lovely presentation. Very practical question, because on social issues, I feel that processes on the ground are very important, and then they do yield results later on. Now with corporates, I haven't had too much experience working directly with them. But in corporate partnerships, what kind of they put across against deliverables? Do they really also look at processes on the ground, because results may not be immediate? And the other question is, what are the mechanisms adopted for monitoring? Do we monitor, or the partners and we monitor and provide reports, or the partners are also, the corporate partners are also involved in monitoring itself?
Praveen, you want to take that?
Yeah. Hi, Anand. Praveen here. So basically, two questions you are asking. So one is basically, how they they deliver results on ground. So if I understand that right, basically, just to give you an example, we have a team currently, the Vodafone volunteers, employee volunteers. They are working to strengthen an app which is called Lab on Tab. So what happens is it's basically and you know this, Anand, it's with Agastya, and we are kind of strengthening that whole system that they have to take it to the next level, is to see how we can deliver science and mathematics curriculum to rural children using that. So we have these technical volunteers who are based there to strengthen that. That's one example. The second example, as I told you earlier, we have many examples where the volunteers are contributing directly to do agro value chain work. So they are doing agro value chain analysis to kind of map that and give a solution and recommendation which the organizations can take on. So these are all on ground real impact kind of examples, and we have many more. The second level at the organization, how we are tracking is we have developed a mobile app, volunteer tracking mobile app, which on a day-to-day basis we are able to real-time track the progress of volunteer delivery of their tasks on a day-to-day basis. So that also we are collecting, and we have developed a mobile volunteer monitoring mobile app, which we just piloted this time, and we'll be rolling out to our other programs as well. And we also have robust systems. Although it is a 1 month or 2 month volunteer placement duration, we do a rigorous mid project assessment and debrief, wherein we capture these learnings.
Well, thanks a lot, Praveen. Thank you.
And just one point to be added, again coming from the learning, from last few years, is that earlier, we used to look a lot at cycle-wise outcomes. That we engaged 12 IBM volunteers for a month. So what were the outputs that they brought out? But now at the same time we are looking at a year-long intervention. So when we are having multiple cycles or different cohorts of volunteers coming from one or different companies, we try and see what exact result had that generated over a period of time, over a period of 1 year, and how many beneficiaries and what kind of impact it has transformed. So that has also been one of the learnings from moving for a cyclic approach in terms of monitoring to a year-long approach, very well integrated to the development outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks both. We've got at least 10 questions coming up, so let's try and keep them as brief as possible. And the next person, if you could unmute, would be Kim Ruan. I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Okay, thank you. Hello from Cambodia, and very, very interesting to hear your presentation. So my question is, what support did you provide to this corporate volunteers while they are in placement, whether from VSO and also from their IBM as well? Thank you.
I didn't understand. Paul, could you rephrase the question again, please?
Yes. My question is, what support did you provide to corporate volunteers?
Support. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of support, first thing is we do a pre-departure orientation process. And in that, we orient them to the development issues. We kind of set the context. Before they come to the placement, we do pre-departure, kind of a preparatory program, which we do a lot of calls, before they come, in terms of their preparedness, in terms of the logistics, the nature of accommodation that they can expect, the nature of the field trips that they have to undertake, the challenges which they might have to face in the NGOs and so on. And even in the pre-departure orientation, we emphasize on all these areas as to what is the challenges that they may go through in the placement location. And then we provide online 24/7 support for them wherever necessary, throughout the placement period. So if they are going wrong, if they are getting confused, or if they are getting derailed from the scope of work, we give that strategic input and also one-on-one mentoring support.
The other thing that we are which is in the pipeline, in the planning of how we manage some of these volunteers in future, is to actually develop some sort of standardized training curricula for them once they arrive in country. So to give an example, as we are planning for the ICS program to restart next year for VSO India, we are in the process of developing some kind of a soft skills training manual, which we want the volunteers to get trained on, and then sort of use some of those trainings to then work with our partner NGOs on the ground. The whole idea is to standardize some of the approaches that we are using in terms of providing support to the volunteers, but also then in the long run make them into a value add that VSO India can provide, particularly to corporate volunteers and corporates in that sense going forward, so that they look at us more and more as a as a really professional outfit which has a lot to offer in terms of the entire volunteering cycle from the start to the end, and make that into something which is proprietary for us and something that we can actually use to then create our own niche within the larger CSR work that is happening in the country.
Just to add, we also do a partner preparatory orientation, so that they are also equipped to manage the volunteers, and we do a thorough volunteer management program for them. So we do a training for them so that they are able to not only manage these volunteers, but their capacity is strengthened in volunteer management.
Thanks, then. Ratna, please, could you unmute?
Yeah. Thank you, India team, for such a lovely presentation. My question is, how will it take to get corporate volunteers, and how challenging is it to get the right quality profession at that particular job? Thank you.
Okay, getting the right kind of corporate volunteers is always a challenge, and I think that the only way you can mitigate the risks and the challenges involved is by having very clear timelines. Like Praveen said, we actually start engaging with the corporate, several months in advance in terms of, what the scope of work is, what the expectations of the partner organizations are, what kind of a fitment would work well, and therefore defining the kind of volunteer we are looking for. So just like in Salesforce, for our regular volunteering, we have a 6-month sort of a lead up in terms of defining scopes of work and what we expect the volunteers to do. We do exactly the same thing, not necessarily using the Salesforce software, but then we have similar sort of inbuilt in-house processes where we have that kind of a lead time. The other thing which is really important is helping the private sector really understand what we are trying to do at a strategic level. So, which then ties into some of these operational elements. So we spend a lot of time in terms of working closely with the private sector partners over very long lead times, in which we are trying to really help them understand what the project is in terms of the larger strategic direction that we are taking with regard to it, and also very often influencing them and helping their thinking evolve in terms of how their volunteers can best fit into the strategy that we have for VSO in the country. So it's not a sort of it's not a simple conversation. It's a very complex conversation that we engage with them from both a strategic as well as an operational viewpoint, and with enough lead time, so that helps us in determining who the best volunteers are. And then of course it is a learning process, and sometimes we have learned from experience about wrong fitments, and then like Praveen said, we engage very hands-on with the volunteers when they're actually working. So if we feel that there is a misfit of a particular volunteer in a particular program, we do take measures in terms of either changing the project or supporting that volunteer in whatever way we can, using in-house resources as well.
Okay, thanks. Can we have Rohit, please? Rohit, are you there? So Rohit asks, I've experienced working with different disabled groups in Nepal in agro-based value chains here. It's very difficult to link with financial institutions. Any experience?
Well, the only experience that we have is in actually, creating, platforms using the VSO participatory market systems development approach, the PMSD approach, in which we try to bring different stakeholders together on one platform to try and understand what are the issues with regard to the marketing and the selling of produce, and very often, working through farmer producer organization and self-help groups. So our entire value chain work in India is, trying to collectivize smallholder farmers, particularly women, either into SHGs or self-help groups or into farmer producer organizations, and then trying to negotiate in a larger platform with different stakeholders to try and maximize their value along the value chain. So as part of that approach, we have had people who are from the financial sector, whether it's banks or lending organizations and so on, be part of those PMSD workshops, and some of those platforms have been, in fact, facilitated by our volunteers. So we do have that kind of an experience in terms of creating that space and dialogue for primary actors to engage with financial institutions. And then, of course, the idea is that the community takes those discussions and dialogues forward in the best way possible.
Great, thanks. Ashlina?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, wonderful. Sorry. Hello, Shalene, Praveen, and Sachal. I just had a question about M&E. I remember when you were developing the World of Difference program, that there was talk about working with Vodafone on an app that they had to support M&E collection for their volunteering programs. I was just wondering if you're using that app, how's it going, and is there any wider learning for VSO on how to work with apps to support M&E collection?
Yeah, the app is up and running, and the volunteers are able to, use it on a day-to-day basis, so they give daily updates. Yes, there is slight challenge because, we have to pull up the volunteers to use it, because that's been a slight challenge. But overall, we are able to, track the progress on a daily basis. As to what tasks they have done and what task is balanced, so that we are able to monitor. And as the entire cycle is going to finish, we are going to generate the entire report using the app.
Thanks. Alok, please.
Hi, Paul. Thank you. VS India team, great presentation. I think very inspiring to see how our sort of volunteers, particularly from the corporate backgrounds, are yielding results. And as I was listening to the entire story unfolding, just a metaphor come into my mind, saying, we seem to have moved nicely from the age-old 5 days cricket to the 2020 game, and seem to be enjoying the results of what we're achieving. I actually have a number of questions, but for want of time and to respect others as well, I wanted to check, did you have any lessons that tell us there are limitations, or what are the other consequences that we might have had through the experience of this sort of corporate volunteering? So when we look at the India story, I saw the the webinar mentioning in India it is yes. Is there a country where it is a no?
Yeah, Alok, that's a great question. I mean, I think, in terms of planning for corporate volunteers to be really impactful at the country level, I think that you need to have a certain degree of openness from the private sector, and very often that openness is not there. And I would imagine that it's lesser so in other countries. It's definitely not, not very easy to have those conversations with the private sector in India today. But at the same time, I think that, increasingly the private sector also realizes that, in the past they've been doing all kinds of CSR activities which have been piecemeal, which have been ad hoc, not really linked up, and not strategic in that sense. And so they are increasingly wanting to develop something which is more strategic as well. So I think that the space is opening up. The challenge that I see for VSO India, on an ongoing basis, is to sort of have those difficult conversations with the corporates to try and make the entire initiative as strategic as possible from VSO India mission's point of view. And and that sometimes can be a challenge because every private sector will have their own CSR strategy, which may not necessarily link with our own mission or our strategy of the country office. So I think I don't think that I would be able to answer that question as a blanket, as a black and white thing. I would say that every country office needs to probably evaluate the landscape of private sector organizations to see where the strategic fitment is there, and you just have to be sort of systematic and also very brutal about it, in the sense that there are certain organizations whose strategy is or approach will never match to your values or to your own strategy in country and so on, and that is an ongoing challenge. And one of the things that that we've seen is that it's the fitment may not exist right at the start, but you can always advocate and work with the private sector to get there. So to give you an example, with Bharti Infratel, their volunteers are actually going into the the skilling program for for skilling of women from urban slums, which is part of our EYEE strategy, and that's that has taken a little bit of sort of advocacy with them. Similarly with Vodafone in inclusive education. So now Vodafone from next year, from the standard World of Difference program, they actually want us to move to a World of Difference program which is focusing only on inclusive education, looking at the kind of approaches that VSO India has taken in the past. Now that has required us of course to really have some real conversations with Vodafone to try and help them show how World of Difference can actually become more strategic over the long term. Sometimes these conversations are successful and sometimes not, and I think that's the challenge, and that's what I would say for every country, that it would be important to map the right corporates, invest a lot of times in advocacy with them, because we've as development partners we've been used to sort of having a no-go sort of a situation with donors. Either your project proposal is successful or not, whereas with corporates it's really a long haul, and sometimes you have to sort of go through some very, very difficult conversations where you feel you can't work with a corporate to ultimately reach a point where you think you can.
Thank you, Shalini. And just a quick in addition to that, because India office has been doing this for a while, and through this successful partnerships we are also part of the committee of Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So some of the challenges which the corporate sector itself is facing in terms of understanding and building around CSR, because the law is also not very new, very old. So we are able to deliberate on some of those challenges as well at the ministry level. Also just an offer of support that in India we have developed a lot of tools, a lot of strategies, a lot of templates for actually mapping the right corporates, alignment of strategies, how do we contact them and how do we take the engagement ahead. So I'll be more than happy to share that with other countries, even out of Asia Pacific region, if you think you can benefit from that.
Thanks. Andy, could you have your question, please? We've only got a couple of minutes left. Andy?
Hi, hello everyone. That was a great presentation, thank you, and thank you for your last question. I did have a specific question around IBM, but I'll take that offline. What I would like to ask, and I think this is for follow-up after this conversation in fact, is that there's clearly huge strategic opportunity here for VSO, and I would like to hear from core program area teams and country offices their response to what's contained in this presentation, and what it means for them, and what the possibilities could be as we look at this in more detail. So that's just a question which I'd ask the private sector engagement team here to take forward and engage with the rest of the organisation, working with the India team and their experience. So I'll leave my specific question to take offline, but that's something for follow-up, please.
Thanks, Andy. And Ken, you've got a question, I think. Oh, Ken, your question was answered. Okay. So I think, Robert, do you have a question?
Yeah, hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm calling from Kathmandu. I think it's great to see evidence built in these case studies. What I want to make sure we're doing is that we're able to turn this into a case that can be made to corporate world, that this is going to help these companies with their CSR-related outcomes. Recently, for example, we were talking with Sachal and others about an opportunity with 3M, and it came up that 3M was looking at a competing bid from Pixar Global in the U.S. And it struck me that, I didn't know or have tools in how to make the case for VSO versus these competing CSR solutions. And I know that VSO historically has not competed in that field. So I'm very anxious to make sure that the findings from India are that there's a program to translate that into marketing materials and other items that we need to make the case for the corporates. Can anybody on this call talk to that?
Yeah, I can, Robert. Thanks for that. So yeah, there's a number of intermediaries who we come up against quite a lot, actually. So Pixar is one, Emerging World, UNV, CUSO, ABD. So we've formed a bit of a collaboration with them. So we're trying to share our experience of impact evaluation so that we can lead that field, really. So this research and some work we've done in Ghana and some work we're just about to do in Bangladesh around corporate volunteer will feed into that. They've got a lot of evidence around impact on individuals, so the corporate volunteers. We've now got increasing evidence now around the development impact, and that's just a space there's very little work being done. So we really are leading the field there, and that will give us a massive advantage, as you're saying, when we're making the case to corporates, because we are essentially competing against them. So yeah, and this report actually is really, really helpful in terms of taking the next step on that. Okay, very last question, over to George.
Sorry, can I just add one thing to what Paul said, which is that in India, like Sachal said, we've been producing a lot of collaterals, both in terms of marketing materials, case studies, pamphlets, PowerPoint presentations, to really go and do the hard selling in that sense to the corporates. But I think that there is a huge opportunity at this point in time for VSO globally to do something similar. And I know that the private sector engagement team is doing that to quite a large extent, but I think that now increasingly with a lot of work on the ground in many countries, through the private sector engagement work and through knowledge exchange, I think the time has come to actually put a lot of that together and really refresh our global marketing with the private sector in terms of some of those materials, because they do make a lot of difference.
Thanks. George.
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlene and the India team, for a really great presentation and also responding to the questions. Mine is just concerning new emerging corporates or smaller type of corporates. What approach are you using? Do you have experience about working with corporations that are primarily domiciled in India, and how does that differ with the larger big corporates that are international in nature?
Sure. Thank you, George. Yes, actually we are. That is one of the areas that we are looking at. I spoke about the 2% CSR bill, which is there in India. If we deep dive into, what are the learnings from that bill, is that 75% of the companies which fall under the purview of that bill are actually running projects which are worth £50,000, which is really small. So at the time when we are also working at a lot of multinationals, the next step is also at looking at corporate consortia, which can then, pool in their small fundings together for a particular development goal. And, VSO can kind of take that on and then work through partners for implementation of this kind of projects. So definitely looking at diversification in that area.
The only thing, George, that I would sort of say is that it's with the large corporates and MNCs, clearly the challenge of being more strategic and of the need to do advocacy with them is there. It's even more magnified when you look at small and medium-sized corporations and smaller private sector organizations, because they, the money that they're talking about is smaller, so they don't see that from a large strategic perspective, they've had traditionally worked with several civil society organizations, so it's really fragmented work. So I think that the opportunity, like Sachal is saying, definitely exists, though the need to do advocacy with them and help them see value in sort of pooling their funds and to look at things more strategically, that challenge exists, and we are trying to work through that, but it's definitely harder to work with that group of corporates, that's for sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
Just a last
Thanks.
point here from Paul Benson in our team.
Hello everyone. Hi Shalene. Hi Sachal. One of the points I just wanted to make with regard to companies is that because a lot of the hard work we've been doing in the private sector team is that we're now actually being approached by companies directly rather than sort of constantly knocking on doors and having to get our face in front of people. We've had that recently with Slime Derby, and as Robert and Sachal have mentioned with 3M, and there are others in the pipeline. And one of the things that means is that when companies approach us, we have to move at their speed rather than our speed. And that sometimes is where there's a little bit of a disconnect between VSO and the corporate world. So what I would encourage you to do is that when you get approaches from companies, and you will get them directly, or if we can approach you with the approaches that we've had from companies, is that we work together on being able to respond really quickly so we can seize those opportunities.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. Yeah. I think maybe we have to take this offline now, because now we're already a few minutes past. And I just wanted to say a really big thank you to the India team for putting on this fantastic presentation, Sachal, Praveen, Charlene, and everybody. And we will have an external webinar on the 18th, which will invite you all to looking at the IBM impact survey in more depth. So watch this space for that. Otherwise, thanks everybody very much for attending, and we'll try and send round a summary of this in the next couple of days. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.